Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Overcooked Podcast. We are officially here, and today we've got exciting topics. We've got the Google Pixel 10 and Pixel Watch 4 launch, which is emphasizing AI. We're also taking a look at the Amazon Fire tablets ditching Fire OS for Android. That's a crazy one. We're talking about Nvidia and AMD resuming chip sales to China with a catch. And we're talking about TikTok faces a US ban, if not solved by the 17th of September. We're also talking about Instagram, which is adding reposts and friend maps for sharing. We're taking a look at Meta's AI Chatbots, which are mimicking celebrities without permission and might get themselves in some trouble. We're also taking a look at an AI-powered self-driving lab, which discovers materials faster. We're taking a look at low doses of lithium is reversing Alzheimer's in mice and what that might mean for us. And finally, we're taking a look at OpenAI's plans for a $500 billion AI data center push starting in India. I highly recommend sticking around for this one, as it is actually very, very interesting. But let's kick it off at the beginning with the Google Pixel 10 launch with the Watch 4 and their emphasis on the AI. So the launch was confirmed on August 20th, and Google unveiled its Pixel 10 series at a live Made by Google event in New York. Google announced the first generation Pixel smartphones in only 2016, which was nearly a decade ago. And basically now Google is celebrating their 10 years of Google Pixel devices, making AI the centerpiece of the Pixel experience, featuring things like on-device AI, which is a major differentiator from Apple and Samsung, who rely more on cloud processing. So talking about this a little bit more, Google coming out with their Pixel 10 Pro, and of course we saw, with the release of the iPhone 16, major emphasis on the AI features, even the launch of Samsung's newer phones as well, also featuring quite a highlight on the AI features. But Google decided to come out with the Pixel 10 and the Pixel Watch 4, focusing on AI in a little bit of a different way. Here we see things like on-device AI, which is an interesting concept because, when Google decided to launch their Pixel and their Pixel Watch, they said, what about if we integrate more of the AI features directly into the phone itself, not something that happens every single time with the cloud? Whereas Apple and Samsung do have their own generative models, some of their AI processing is obviously leaning onto things like GPT integration and generative AI cloud processing and things like that. Seeing those features come directly into the phone might open up some windows for some unique use cases. For one, you might be able to do things like real-time translations, right? You might be traveling, you might be on an airplane, they might not speak the language you can speak, and you'll be able to utilize AI translations directly on device without even needing to be connected to the internet. So operating in things like airplane mode could be one of the features you might see. Even things like faster voice commands, and obviously one of the totes is more reliable privacy. So we don't know exactly what that might look like, and we might actually have to have a hands-on look at some of the new Pixel devices. But what that really means is you might have some accessibility tools to see what is my data that is being stored locally on the device, what is my history of some of the AI processing that my device has done. But I think most importantly, that processing isn't sent somewhere to be processed and then sent back to your phone. So that maybe is one of the features of the on-device AI. And on our screen share here, we can see, look at the Pixel 10, which does look very sleek. I feel like always, when we're looking at these devices, we see, a lot of similarities between all of the different smartphones, looking very much like some of the newer iPhones here, the Pixel 10. But I'm very interested to see what happens. We've got the Tensor G5 chip, which is one of the new chips. It also features Gemini Neo, which will run on the Tensor G5. So I think that could be interesting. And then we also see things like Magic Q, which meets you in some of your favorite apps like Google Messages and iPhone app to proactively offer the right information at the right time, like finding those perfect cat pictures whenever someone asks, or maybe being able to search your library for things like that. I find this quite useful because, you're not always, you might not remember the location you took the photo in, or you might not remember the specific date that you took the photo, or you might just want to find all the pictures of a friend, or all the pictures of yourself, or all the pictures of you standing next to a red Lamborghini. So that might be some useful features to go into your library and actually search and have that device processing happening in real time. You can imagine maybe the frustration of some users, having to have that processed somewhere else. But we also expect that users may gain greater control of their local data with the privacy settings. I don't know how applicable that will be, like how much data, control you'll practice in real time. We'll have to wait and see to see that. But overall, Google is betting heavily on AI as a unique edge in the smartphone and wearable market. So definitely going to be keeping an eye open on this. And if anybody has a Pixel 10 or something of that nature, maybe the a Watch 4, maybe you can share your experience and let us know if some of these on-device processors might be helping you and what your experience is of some of this. Next up, we're taking a look at what I think is a very interesting move by Amazon to basically replace the Amazon Fire OS for Android. So Fire OS has always been, part and parcel a feature of the Amazon Fire tablets. Obviously, Amazon Fire tablets positioning themselves as like a budget-friendly solution. You don't really see any hardware or maybe software specific advantages over some of the other tech. Definitely positioned as a budget solution for end users, but always having preferred to keep their operating system focused on like a closed ecosystem similar to Apple. But that created potentially some unwanted issues, such as if you're operating with the Amazon Fire OS tablet, you can't access the majority of apps on the Google Play Store. In fact, the only way you can access an app that would be on the Google Play Store is if those developers specifically developed within the Fire OS operating system. And obviously managing an operating system like this, I think for someone like Amazon is a huge ordeal. You have to keep it up to date, even for the developers. It's not just about Amazon, it's also about the developers. You have to keep the apps updated. You have to continually maintain the operating system. You have to maintain the security of the operating system. So it was announced on August 20th that Amazon plans to release new Fire tablets with the Android native operating system, which means for Fire OS users, you're now going to have access back to the Play Store and be able to access some of those Play Store centric apps that might have been lacking in the Fire OS. But this does offer some greater flexibility. It does have some drawbacks. For example, now that they're phasing out Fire OS development teams and things like that, who've now created departments and workforce specifically for maintaining their apps on Fire OS, are going to have to look at considering what to do with that workforce. The most obvious kind of solution would be keep them around, keep them maintaining Fire OS for as long as possible until Amazon officially kind of takes Fire OS support completely away. But it does create this dual focus for developers where now they know, oh no, Fire OS isn't going to be around forever. I'm going to be having app updates forever. I can now at least prioritize development on Android, but what about all of our users on Fire OS? And how do we measure how many users are active on Fire OS? How do we know when the right time to disband Fire OS is? So I think an interesting decision by Amazon, but I think saving themselves a lot of development costs by taking away that development component in the near future. I don't think we'll see existing Fire tablets directly migrate to Android. I think that's very unlikely. I think what's more likely to happen is only new Fire OS tablets that are being built and distributed are going to feature a newer operating system. What that means for migration of data from one Fire OS tablet to a newer Fire OS tablet, we saw a problem with Android iOS migrations for things like chat history on WhatsApp. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. I'm sure it will be slightly more friendly than the iPhone Samsung migration or Android iOS migration. But there may be a short-term adjustment period for developers And we also expect to see the maintaining of its affordable pricing strategy. I don't think we'll see it get much more expensive for users. I think they'll keep trying to position themselves as a budget-friendly solution. But overall, I think a win-win move that improves user experience while opening opportunities for developers to keep their focus, on the iOS and Android ecosystems. And very hard right now, we saw with Harmony OS with the Huawei, very hard now to establish and maintain an operating system where every single developer that is developing apps is expected to, also cater to a third operating system. Smaller apps can't really do that. And I think a sound strategy by Amazon, probably as a byproduct of seeing what happens in the market and seeing some of that user frustration at not being able to access certain apps and features that they would have wanted. But the Fire OS operating system did offer quite a nice environment for managing your Amazon centric services like Prime Video and Amazon and all the AWS kind of accessibility and things like that. But we'll see what happens as the future progresses. Very much interested to see how they navigate that. Next topic, this is quite interesting. Nvidia and AMD have resumed chip sales to China. So if you didn't know, AMD and Nvidia were banned from selling chips to China, obviously as a US focus, probably trying to reduce the amount of competitive landscape that existed between the US and China in terms of advanced AI technologies, and also from security point of views. Obviously don't want to let those chips get into the wrong hands. But we've seen a development in the process now. On July 14, 2025, Nvidia announced its plan to resume sales of its H20 AI chip to China. But so far, AMD hasn't publicly confirmed the arrangement yet. However, we can expect AMD and Nvidia, which have agreed to pay the US government 15% of Chinese revenues as part of the unprecedented deal to secure export licenses to China. So kind of the trade-off here is, yes, you may resume sales to China, but you're going to have to pay 15% of those revenues as a fee for exporting to China. And this might be a geopolitical move. It definitely creates, China is now going to be expected to pay 15% more for any AI chip. So it costs more for China to utilize the same technology as the US. A very strategic move. I don't think it's about revenue. I think it's about strategic disadvantage. And, nothing's more of a disadvantage than a financial hurdle, like a 15% additional cost on anything you try and do with those chips. We have seen China try and, get going on creating some of their own chip dependence through the past 2 years as that ban has been in place and those restrictions have been in place. But we don't really see anything quite, to the performance category of something like AMD and Nvidia's AI capabilities. But we have seen some, independence that was formed, and I wonder what's going to happen. I believe that China will continue to try and maintain some independence. I think, even though chip sales have resumed, they might have an aggressive acquisition of that hardware. But at the end of the day, if they do create technologies which challenge the US, then we could see the chip ban go into place again as another strategic disadvantage, maybe even more emphasized. We've seen the tariff moves from the US, so I do think we're going to see, if China does do too well, they might see their more restrictions get put into place, maybe a higher fee even get put into place. We don't exactly know what might happen, but I think from a Chinese point of view, you don't want to put yourself back into that position again. So I think we're going to see an attempt to accelerate the independence and hopefully try and develop some chips that they can rely on, and probably trying to advance the technologies that they've already established for these particular products. Now, this also follows the export restrictions that blocked previous sales. So this didn't just come out of nowhere. It was previously something that happened. And essentially, the situation is a balancing act between access and self-reliance. So we don't exactly know what the reverse engineering risks might be. Maybe China tries to reverse engineer some of this technology, and I guess, nothing is completely inaccessible. They would have attempted to do some reverse engineering already, I'm sure. They would have got access to some chips possibly already to try and reverse engineer the technology, but what that means for the patency of that technology, what that might mean for the future of the relationship between these large AI chip manufacturers and China, if they make the wrong move or they release the wrong product or they're too competitive or something like that, then we could see some problems coming into the mix. However, overall, a mix of geopolitics and tech strategy shaping the AI chip market at the moment. So essentially, CEO Jensen Huang promotes AI in Washington, D.C. and China. So yeah, very interesting. We'll see where this goes in the future. I'm sure we'll keep our eyes open. Next, we're taking a look at TikTok, which faces a US ban if not sold by September 17th. So this is kind of a continuation of the problems that we've already seen in the past with China and TikTok having to in the past they wanted to create a global TikTok business that would essentially be purchased by large tech conglomerates, and that would then allow them to operate within US borders, and essentially that was going into process, but it hasn't quite materialized. So this is less of a new big explosion type. There's no direct trigger here. We're just seeing the clock run out. We're just seeing the clock run out on a previous existing deal, and now they're time's shrinking, time's getting close to the deadline, and they're needing to make a decision now. So if no deal is reached by September 17th, the app could face again a US ban and be pulled from the app stores. President Donald Trump has for a third time extended the deadline that would have required TikTok to be sold or face a ban, and news outlets started covering the extension on the 19th of June. So this deadline is basically to sell to a US company or risk ban. It's a recurring issue with deadline extensions popping up before. TikTok may need to sell a stake in its US operations, and TikTok is a global platform, making it such a more complicated move. Because if you think about it, TikTok operates in most countries around the world. So having to sell a portion of that business just to operate in the US is quite an ask. And South Africa has a similar type arrangement whereby, large companies that want to operate in South Africa have to be owned by, previously disadvantaged groups in South Africa. And it creates a complex problem where someone like Starlink, for example, wants to, operate in South Africa. Technology that Starlink offers would definitely be useful here in South Africa with reduced range and infrastructure for free access internet. However, because of those agreements, Starlink has not integrated into South Africa yet, and a lot of kind of back-rooted kind of avenues have popped up for people to have the technology of Starlink, but it's not something that's readily available. I think the latest information is if someone in South Africa wants to have Starlink here in South Africa, they're going to have to send the equipment off every, I think it's 2 months or 3 months, off to a country that does support Starlink for it to be resynchronized, and then the user or the consumer has to actually activate international roaming. So essentially finding a backdoor to having the technology available. And I think something like TikTok only being allowed to be in the US if the US owns a portion of it, and the onus is on TikTok to essentially find that buyer and come to the agreed upon rate. So not only are they saying, hey, look, you have to sell a stake of your business in order to operate in the US, but you have to find the buyer, and the buyer has to be happy with the price. And that's where the complicated problem comes in, because TikTok is a multi-billion-dollar company, so the deal itself would be multi-billion dollars. I believe at some stage Walmart and Oracle were in discussions to kind of team up to make that purchase, but we haven't seen that kind of come to fruition yet. So we're kind of just waiting, and we don't really know what's going to happen. My expectation is that TikTok will find a buyer of some kind. They'll maybe make that global enterprise and then sell that, maybe try and maintain some IP in some way, shape or form, or some security on their technology in some way, shape or form. But ultimately a very difficult decision for TikTok to make, and a very difficult path to navigate. But wholly, TikTok as a business is a very good purchase, right, for any business, because there's thousands of users. So for a business in the US that is purchasing a stake of TikTok, they might have, accessibility to thousands and millions of users in the US that may be a possible customer. And it accesses that ad revenue as well. I'm sure there'll be an ad revenue split, and maybe that ad revenue split has to be specific to the US. So it makes it difficult, because if you're a US company buying a percentage of TikTok, in order for TikTok to be able to operate in the US, does that entitle you to ad revenue from the rest of the world? These are the decisions that they have to make. We actually have a video from Trump talking about this. Let's open it up here quickly.
The launching of the White House TikTok account, are you no longer concerned about privacy concerns or national security problems?
I'm really not. I think it's highly overrated. So I'm a fan of TikTok. My kids like TikTok. Young people love TikTok. If we can keep it going, good. And we're going to watch the security concerns. And we have buyers, American buyers. We have American buyers. In the meantime, until the complexity of things work out, we just extend a little bit longer. But we have buyers. We have very substantial American.
So there you have it.
buyers.
Trump saying, look, he likes TikTok. He doesn't truly believe, he thinks it's a little bit overrated, the whole ban and the security issue. He says his kids use TikTok as well. And he says there are American buyers ready to, or lined up, I would say, to buy it. So he's just kind of playing ball. He's extending it a little bit. And I feel like it's a little bit of a, quid quo pro. That we see with Trump, maybe supportive of TikTok and actually trying to show, hey, look, I want to make a deal here. I want to make it work. So definitely interested to see what happens here. We've got about 9 days left until this ban takes place. But by the time we're recording our next podcast, it'll be 2 days left. So do stick around and let's come and see what happens here in this stalemate and tug of war between regulators and TikTok. And let's see who are the actual buyers of TikTok. How will this unfold? Or will TikTok get banned? If it does get banned, I think we're going to see some unrest. I think we're going to see some backdoors opening up. I think we're going to see some users still trying to access the platform. I think users are going to be angry at the US for enforcing the rules, and they're going to be angry at TikTok for not making a plan. Where do you stand in this matter? Let us know below. Next up, we're taking a look at Instagram, which has added reposts and friend maps for sharing. So you can now repost public reels and feed posts. You can also opt in to sharing your last active location with the friends that you choose, and a new tab in Reels where you can see public content that our friends have interacted with. So I think this is particularly interesting for me, because we see this trading happening between different social media platforms where like features and unique benefits are kind of being swapped and traded between the different platforms. This Snapchat used to have a lot of features like this, and now we see it inside of Instagram, and it's not new for Instagram to kind of take a little bit from somewhere else and put it into their own app. And it does open up the discussion for what are the patented technologies that these companies are able to access. Have we seen any things in the past where companies were able to actually sue for features and specific functionality that apps offer? And that opens up the gray area, because it's actually very difficult for companies like Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok to patent certain features and technologies within their applications. There is some patented elements of how those features are actually provided to the user. What are the technological aspects of how those features are created and provided to the end user, but the idea itself is very difficult to patent. So we see all these apps kind of swapping and changing features between each other, incorporating things that their competitors have and things that other people have that might be more useful in their app than in the other app itself, and the other app is left with very little that they can do about it. And I think that opens up quite an interesting angle where most social media platforms are kind of becoming all the same thing, where Threads have some features and X has some features and Instagram has some features and TikTok has some features, but then Instagram has the TikTok features and Instagram has the Snapchat features and TikTok has the Snapchat features. And so all these apps are kind of becoming all the same thing. And it's just a user preference for which application you'd like to use. Obviously, there's a privacy aspect to it as well. How comfortable are you sharing your last active location with particular friends? And my question is, how will these features be accessible? This was announced by Meta on the 6th of August. So it's been about a month, and we can see how that's matured. But what is going to be some of your privacy controls? Will you say, hey, make my location available for the next hour? Will there be a button that you can click that says, hey, make my location available forever? And if so, what if you forget? What if you accidentally click forever and not 1 hour? And how comfortable are you sharing your live location all the time? Will there be a delay incorporated into that location, right? Meaning, some of these apps, instead of it actually being a technological delay, it's a strategic delay. So there might be a few minutes of delay between your location and what your active location currently is. Like WhatsApp live location, for example, is real time. It's very, very accurate. But on something like Instagram, where, there's a security risk, instead of, if you're a famous rapper or you're Elon Musk or something like that, and you're sharing your live location with your friends, well, instead of trying to become a friend that sees your live location, just social engineer accessibility to your closest friends. So it opens up this risk where the people you share your live location with are actually at a risk to you. If their accounts are hacked or more likely socially engineered access to, then you're also by byproduct sharing that live location with that person who's now no longer that person. And it opens up a massive question, how likely is this feature to roll out? Well, we saw it successfully integrated in things like Snapchat, where friend maps show where friends are if they opt in to share that location. But the goal is from Instagram, I think, is to keep the platform fresh and competitive with other social media apps. And for users, these are simply extra tools to connect and share in fun ways. I think outside of the security risk, I think it's quite a fun feature. I definitely like the idea. You might head out to gym and your friends could see, hey, the bro's at the gym, got to go pump some iron, protein, and they might head out and come join you at the gym. So I think that feature is pretty cool. I think it's very interesting to see how these applications are swapping and sharing features, and how the applications are kind of becoming the same thing. But all in all, a nice little feature set here from Instagram. And I'm not someone who uses I'm not someone that uses Snapchat, for example. So the feature becoming available in Instagram, an app that I do use, is welcomed. And what are your thoughts on this? And is this something that you would utilize? Next up, we're taking a look at much greater controversy from the Meta team, not just on Instagram, but this time specifically the AI chatbots that mimic celebrities without their permission. So this, I think, this is something completely different, right? Here we see Meta's AI chatbots essentially mimic celebrities, and they haven't necessarily got the explicit permission from these celebrities to mimic them. So Meta built these chatbots on its own Meta AI system with its AI studio tools, and they let creators design custom personas complete with celebrity-like avatars, personalities, and even synthetic voices similar to that of a celebrity. And the tech could talk, generate images, and sound like real celebrities thanks to voice cloning and multi-model AI. The goal, of course, high user engagement, which would be beneficial to Instagram. And celebrities are essentially standing up and being like, hold on, wait a minute, it's celebrities like Taylor Swift, Scarlett Johansson, Anne Hathaway, Selena Gomez are some of these celebrities. And what is the revenue sharing model here, if any? And I don't think there is any, where the likeness of these celebrities are being used and the celebrity being reimbursed in some way, shape, or form. It looks like Meta just launched this feature directly out to the public, and this is available if you like it or not. And I think the only way you can get around this is requesting. If you're a famous celebrity and you see, hold up, people are literally talking to me, I'm getting Instagram screenshots of conversations that apparently my AI version has been having with people. Some of these reports are celebrities being flirtatious. If high engagement is the goal, then provocative and flirty conversations are obviously going to be something that happen, whether intentional or not, I'm not sure. Also, users aren't always tech smart. How to know the difference between an AI chatbot and a celebrity? If it sounds like the celebrity, looks like the celebrity, and communicates with you like the celebrity, it's easy to get wrapped up in the smoke and not really know if the relationship element between those two individuals, the AI and the user, can become blurred, and I think creates a lot of problems where you can become hateful towards the celebrity. We've seen a lot of examples of people actually forming relationships with AI conversation bots, and believing it as true as the sky is blue. So what does this mean for Meta? Well, I think the onus being on the celebrities to essentially contact Meta and get their AI celebrity like likeness version removed is quite an ask, considering it's actually the onus is on them to say, hey, look, I don't want this. You've essentially just made this accessible as if I do want it. You've said that I have no choice in it, it's available. But if I would like it not to be available, I actually have to contact you and make it not available. Also, some people don't like the idea of, an AI chatbot using their voice, especially for singers and actors and things like that. That's kind of their unique, that's their uniqueness. That's the thing that people love about them. That's the thing that they've earned money off of. That's what's kept them going. So just to create a version of them that can just freely chat to anybody and remove their choice in who conversations are had with, I think is a bit of a difficult path to navigate. But essentially, this raises the ethical and legal concerns around using likeness without consent. Celebrities may pursue legal action via right of publicity claims, and I think that's fair. Meta might try to say, well, you can have it removed if you want to, so why take legal action? I think both these entities have a lot of push, so a legal battle could definitely unfold. And even if the chatbots are free, they still benefit Meta by boosting engagement. Of course, if the user's more active and he's more engaged, it's going to generate more ad revenue, and that's a profiteering mechanism. So we don't know if that's going to be what happens in the near future, but that's probably making Meta money, having users on the platform. If you use Facebook once a day for a couple minutes, but now you can speak to your favorite celebrity and you spend 6 hours a day speaking to them, you're going to generate a lot more revenue, and that revenue is not being shared with that celebrity. So that's another ethical question. And currently there's no simple opt-out mechanism for celebrities. So it's not just the fact that they can contact them. There's no direct path that's been established yet for the removal of that celebrity likeness AI version. So yeah, I think Meta's definitely going to have a handful here, but I don't think a company as big as Meta makes these decisions or does these things lightly without doing some legal checks and confirming their legal framework. So I think there's going to be going to be a lot of question marks until we see some developments there. Stay tuned and let us know your thoughts. Next up, we're taking a look at AI-powered self-driving lab, which discovers materials faster. So North Carolina State University released a news highlight on August 25th, 2025, detailing the unveiling of Rainbow, a multi-robot self-driving laboratory that autonomously conducts and analyzes up to 1,000 quantum dot synthesis experiments per day. So imagine a scientist that never sleeps, that never rests, that never takes a break, that never goes home, just works all day, every day. Rainbow is essentially an AI-powered self-driving lab capable of running these thousands of experiments daily. It can dramatically speed up the discovery of new materials. We've seen it in the past. We've seen new proteins being discovered. We've seen some medical advancements with antibacterial drugs like antibiotics. So what does this mean for a self-driving lab? Well, it means that scientists can play a bit of the back seat, jump into the back seat a little bit and focus more on some of the creative elements of their work, while experiments are conducted autonomously, quickly, and at a rate that is impossible for one single scientist to do. So that could be the benefit, but at the other end of the spectrum, some people have studied years and years and years to be able to do these, to conduct these experiments and run these tests and things like that, and positively contribute to their relative economy. So, is this another AI actors type problem where we saw, where we saw actors and movie writers striking because, they were scared generative was going to take over their job? Well, how are scientists going to feel about this? I think one benefit of this is it lowers the floor for a potential scientist to become a scientist. A 16-year-old with a great idea, having access to technologies like this might showcase a way for them to participate in a huge discovery that wasn't available before. Although now this self-driving lab isn't available to the end user, right? It's available to individuals that have access to this. So it's not an end user product. It's not available globally. It's not like ChatGPT, but things like this could become available, which means that we could see a different type of world in the near future where, if you were 15 or 16 and you had a great idea and you wanted to conduct experiments with electromagnetism or, things like that, and you could just pay a subscription to access a lab that could conduct experiments for you and analyze results for you. Well, would you still have to go study for 16 years? Maybe you could make a big discovery and then go study for years and years and years. So definitely an ethical question, but also, it's a little bit different to the world of, the writer strikes, because those were writers. They were doing their job every single day. They were writing, they were creating great movie fiction-driven worlds and creating great stories, and then those stories were being created and it was ultimately for education and entertainment purposes. Whereas on this spectrum, when we're talking about breakthroughs in the medical field, breakthroughs in the travel field, breakthroughs in space, in materials that are used in space, in how the human population is going to evolve, well, it's a bit more difficult to say, well, let's just reduce the amount of progress that we can make to ensure that people who are working as scientists maintain their market share. Bit of a difficult one, because we're talking about the advancements. If it's the difference between one of your family members that are sick finding a solution and a cure or not, what is the ethical debate on that fact? So this is definitely an interesting one for me. I'm kind of interested to see where the impact areas like clean energy, medicine, and electronics. It also raises ethical questions about the future role of scientists and the shift in education. And it's overall an exciting advancement that could accelerate the innovation of mankind on a massive scale, and an unprecedented scale that we haven't seen before. So keeping an eye on that one and interested to see what happens there. Next topic, we're taking a look at low-dose lithium reverses Alzheimer's in mice. So this is a big one. A new Nature study finds lithium naturally occurs in the brain and may help protect against Alzheimer's. In mice, a novel compound, lithium orotate, restored memory and reversed signs of brain aging. So the discovery suggests lithium could be both an early biomarker and a potential treatment for Alzheimer's, which is pending human trials. So this study was published in Nature in August 6, 2025, indicating that lithium naturally occurs in the brain. I didn't know lithium naturally occurs in the brain. I thought it's just something used in Teslas. So that's flippin' interesting for me. And researchers found that the lithium levels decline in the brain during early stages of Alzheimer's, likely because lithium binds to toxic amyloid plaques, which was a study by the Harvard School. In mice, restoring lithium levels using a novel compound, lithium orotate, which avoids plaque binding, reversed Alzheimer's symptoms, brain aging, and memory loss with no observed toxicity. So I think Alzheimer's as a disease has been very challenging for mankind to battle, and a lot of people have seen the effects of it, in grandparents and parents as well. Definitely, I have some family members that suffered from it, and it's a cruel disease. It's a cruel problem where you see the person that you once knew slowly but surely just slip away, and reduce into just someone that doesn't recognize you anymore. And hopefully having a way to support the neurological health of individuals and maintaining synaptic connections could be something that I think is very beneficial. And we would definitely call this an overcooked topic, because it could make a massive change to the world we know and protect a lot of people that we hold dear. So yeah, we're going to be monitoring how this progresses, but I would never have thought lithium is a compound which is found in the human brain. Definitely wouldn't have expected to be a compound in the human brain that helps the offset of Alzheimer's, not really the onset, but the lack of lithium could be the onset. So yeah, very interested to see where that progresses to, and what something like Rainbow might do for expediting the human trials of that. And the last topic we have for today is finally upon us. OpenAI is planning a $500 billion AI center push starting in India. For me, this is massive news and absolutely something worth talking about. OpenAI, which everybody knows is the creator of ChatGPT, has decided to do a $500 billion global AI infrastructure initiative called Project Stargate, which is going to be a massive gigawatt scale data center, one of the largest in India. Is actually where they're going to be doing it, and this is why I found it quite interesting. So if anyone doesn't know, OpenAI currently sources their processing power from things like Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS. So when it comes to how they set up their product, how they price their product up until this point, it was all focused on how much it costs them to use these secondary and tertiary parties in order to process your request whenever you're making a prompt and whenever you're doing something. So OpenAI doesn't necessarily have, to this scale at least, their own infrastructure and their own technology that is behind the powering of ChatGPT. So they've decided to actually make a massive, critical $500 billion investment into India, which is essentially going to feature this gigawatt scale data center. And why India? You know, that's the big question I think on most people's mind is, why would you decide to do it in India? Why would you create this massive infrastructure that could be used in the US to, you know, offset the costs of your Amazon AWS and Microsoft Azure services? Well, let's get into it. So first of all, obviously India is got some benefits, right? They're a talent hub. They have a large pool of tech and AI expertise. It's also a strategic positioning. It expands AI infra beyond the US and China. So it takes away some of that US and China infrastructure dependence and gives them some sovereignty. And the regulatory fit. India has announced India AI Mission, which is what this project specifically aligns with. So there's that benefit as well. And also the cost and scale. Infrastructure inside of India is probably cheaper than infrastructure inside of the US. So more bang for your buck. Making such a large critical investment. Also, India is on the other side of the world. So when it comes to, you know, where their data centers are, how users access them, what is the type of user accessibility kind of experience, how streamlined is the service? Well, moving a massive data center into another country, I think, is a big move. For me as well, thinking about it, right? If OpenAI has all this massive infrastructure in India, you know, and relies on these third-party solutions inside of the US, why not just build that inside of the US? Well, I think first and foremost, you know, they've got the roadmap set up for themselves already. They've built the product that they have now on those technologies. So I think doubling the infrastructure inside of the US is kind of non-logical, because they've already got the technology there. They already have the access there. They already have the speed there. So they're not really plugging a solution. I think on the other side of the spectrum, maybe what they won't want to speak about as much as it also creates a competitive landscape for Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS. You're essentially saying, thanks for building us, thanks for helping us get here, but we're now going to do it ourselves. We're going to go in-house and we're not going to continue our relationship, or we're going to take less of our dependence off of you, which is obviously millions and millions of dollars. So why would you want to pick a fight with the people currently, you know, keeping your technology going? For example, you know, if they announced that they were going to be building this inside the US and Amazon AWS and Microsoft Azure said, well, then we're not going to work with you anymore, and turned off their services, well, then AI as a product that you and I use is going to be having a hard time navigating that as well. So I think moving it over to India creates this disconnected competitive landscape. It shows them that when it's about the US and in the US, they're going to be using the people that they arrive there with, and then when it's about, you know, moving and creating technologies in other locations and creating better services for the rest of the world, well, then that's what they're going to do. So what are some of the impacts of this? Well, faster AI access across India and Asia is a definite benefit. People are going to experience, you know, better reliability, lower latency. Some might say, well, what's the point of lower latency? You know, that doesn't necessarily equal just, you know, better solutions, but you would be surprised. You know, most people kind of connect latency with gaming. If you have a 20 ms connection and the guy you're fighting has a 300 ms connection, well, you've got a massive advantage, and you're probably going to lose the battle. It might be a big reason why you don't exactly, you know, survive that ordeal. So latency in gaming is a big thing, but latency in AI might not be looked at as such a big thing. But when it comes to, you know, how Samsung and Apple process requests and things like that, when it goes up to the cloud and then back to your device, well, latency is a big part of that. You know, if you're having a real-time conversation with an AI model and the model's taking, you know, half a second to respond, it's going to feel very different to it taking a blink of a second. You know, 200 to 20 ms versus 1,000 ms is a massive difference. So the streamlined user experience kind of feel for what that service kind of feels like is going to be massively affected by what the latency of that service is. So if you want to create these interconnected cloud-based solutions, then you have to have lower latency. So that is probably going to be one of the benefits as well. It's also a boost for startups and researchers via local infrastructure and partnerships. It's a job creation and education's opportunity element as well with the OpenAI Academy plan. And in the geopolitical weight, it elevates India in global AI competition. So it creates a better partnership. It might expand and help them access their users better. It might be a massive user acquisition move. India has a large population, so making a strategic investment into India might make the government itself promote your product and help raise how much money you're making, increase your revenue. But a big part of this is obviously funding. $500 billion is like 50, it's like 10 Twitters. So it's a lot of money, and it really needs a lot of funding. So some of the backers that we've seen for this is OpenAI, SoftBank, Oracle, and MGX, but it's still very much in early stages. We might see the funding rollout and construction timelines fall out. We might see some changes. This could still be disbanded at the last minute. So funding is a big part of making a $500 billion investment, and I don't think OpenAI just has $500 billion lying around. So they have to make a strategic partner. So SoftBank and Oracle are massive technology firms. So it's probably got enough money to help fund it. And I wonder what the application is in India. Like, is it just raw investment into India? India is going to be very happy about that. So they're probably going to help play ball a little bit, create a location better, help them with their connections and things like that. So I think very much a funding logistical kind of problem that they're going to have to navigate. And some other challenges are things like a gigawatt scale center raises sustainability concerns. It's going to use a lot of power. Where's that power coming from? Is it green energy? There's an execution risk. Massive ambition could create some problems. And also, for the head-to-head competition with Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, I think they're still going to feel somewhat about it. It could have been a lot worse if it was inside of the US, but they still could feel some ways about that decision. But ultimately, we're going to keep an eye open on it and see what happens. But if you have anything to say about it, let us know. Tell us what you think about the situation. And that kind of brings us to the end of episode 2 of our Overcooked podcast. What an absolute pleasure it's been. So excited to be at episode 2 already. We're going to keep going and keep rolling into episode 3 next week. And who knows how many episodes we're going to get through this year. But very much excited to continue this series and hear your guys' feedback. So let us know in the comments below what you think. And until next time, have a great week. See you guys later. Bye-bye.